What up, partners? And welcome to the great debate, where two Wizard staffers argue about something for an indeterminate amount of time. I'm here today with Wizard Associate Editor, Andrew Serwin. Andrew, I hope you're ready for a vigorous debate today. Now, today's topic is retcons, as suggested by the members of the WizardUniverse message boards. And for anybody who's not in on the hip comic book nerd lingo, a retcon is something that stands for Retroactive Continuity, whereby a comic book publisher takes an incident from the past continuity of a hero or a character and goes back and says what you thought you knew about this was untrue, or magically goes back and says what was once true is no longer true, and it changes and spirals out and makes a lot of things different as it goes along. I myself am in the anti-camp on retcons. I personally think that retcons are useless and really just endlessly complicate things, and let me tell you why. Generally, I think the idea of taking a character and updating it and rebooting it and saying, here is a character that is now fresh, that a younger audience or a new audience can pick up and enjoy upon, is a good idea. However, when you say, we've really got to make this fit for the fanboys and we've really got to make this in continuity, and you go back and you try to make every little piece of difference between a comic book from 1964 and a comic book from 2008 fit together, really what you're doing is letting weird plot points and the idea of what's going on in our world tell the story, instead of just saying, let's take some characters and have them have this version or this take and let the characters tell the story. And I find that most times when they go back and they try to erase a piece of a character's history, or they try to justify a new part of a character by jiggering and re-explaining something in the past, all it is talking about, you know, the macro, bigger industry in the comics rather than just talking about stories, which is what should be going on. What do you think?
Well, Kyle, you bring up many interesting, albeit long-winded points during your anti-retcon argument. But I would like to point out that the way I look at a retcon is sort of like a nice lemon sorbet in the middle of a course of an otherwise heavy dinner. I think it's a little unrealistic to expect that something that affected Spider-Man, who we might point out is the reason this whole topic came up in the first place with Brand New Day and One More Day. I think it's a little unrealistic to expect that something that affected Spider-Man in 1963 or 64 or whatever should then come into play now in 2008. I think it sort of hinders creators to a certain extent, and certainly trying to juggle that much continuity just becomes unwieldy at a certain point. So, do I agree that the One More Day thing turned out like it should have? I'll leave that for other people to decide. I don't want to weigh in one way or the other. But I think Marvel certainly has every right to retcon their characters. And, you know, as many people on our message boards who have kind of negatively criticized it, you also have to point out that the issues are selling out. So, so for every vocal person who's out there saying this retcon didn't work, there's 20 people who are still buying the book just based on the buzz that's generated. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a pro retcon guy when it makes sense and when it's done effectively. And that's all I'll really say about Spider-Man One More Day.
All right, now let me ask you a question. You say when it makes sense and when it works effectively. Can you come up with an example of a story that involves a retcon from any time in comics history that you think this was a story that I really enjoyed and it was changing up things about characters or history?
I think at the time it came out, and I wasn't a big reader of it then, but I certainly think that what DC wanted to do with Man of Steel and kind of abandon a lot of the sort of goofier aspects of the Silver Age and kind of make Superman a little more relevant for readers at the time, I think it certainly worked in that time frame. I think it's also interesting to point out that DC has now completely undone that retcon and is adding all of those Silver Age elements back into Superman's origin. But I think it's also a matter of, you know, what people are kind of into at any given time. I mean, you look at the comic industry as a whole, and it's always peaks and valleys, and it's always, you know, there's 10 years between this and that and the other thing. But I mean, this is a time right now when people seem to want a younger, fresher Spider-Man. And so that's what Marvel's trying to put out there to the broadest audience possible.
Now, what do you call it when a company goes back and reverses a retcon? What is that, a recon? A pro-con?
I don't know what. I think Missy Misdemeanor Elliott probably said it best when she said, I'll throw your thing down, flip it, and reverse it. but that's probably a little too much for some people to handle.
Yeah, maybe.
So I'm just going to go with a re-retcon.
All right, a re-retcon. Well, that works well. Well, if you have any opinions on what's going on with retcons or anything in comics, be sure to log on to the message boards at WizardUniverse.com and check back in here another time for more of The Great Debate.